Welcome into the Big City Sports Podcast. We have another episode coming up, and today it's going to be a little bit of a shorter episode. We do apologize for not coming out on Thursday. It's a day later. Just had some scheduling conflicts there, but we're back better than ever, and we're going to recap some NFL. We're going to talk about the Yankees, who have a prime opportunity with some games coming up against Boston this weekend. A couple series that could determine their postseason fate. So we'll get into all that and more. Before we do that, Swig, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, man. It's good to be back. Got a lot of opinions today, so why don't we just get right into it?
Yeah, I see you're not wearing a Plaxico jersey, so that's good. We
What
will
about
start. We will start off at the top with the Chicago Bears, the quarterback position. Andy Dalton's hurt, right? We saw the injury take place to Andy Dalton. Justin Fields came in. He made some plays. He made some not so great plays. I think that's what you're going to see here with Justin Fields. Now, he goes up against this Cleveland defense. Usually in the first game against a rookie quarterback, they don't usually win their first game, right? This is sort of like a feeling out process. Cleveland's a darn good football team, but before we get into that, I just want to pick your brain. Do you think Justin Fields starting is the right call here?
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, I thought from the beginning it was clear that he was the Bears' best chance to win, and I'll pat myself on the back real quick. I know it's due to injury, but did I say he was going to start week 3 or what? We got this on video and audio from a few weeks ago. No, it's because of injury, but I said it was like the Cleveland situation with Tyrod and Baker Mayfield, and look what happened.
Injury and all.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes they can be Nostradamus up in here. Anyway. But yeah, regardless of the injury status, I do think Fields is the best chance for the Bears to win. Looking back quickly at his performance in the game against the Bengals the other day, Joe Burrow has a nightmarish 3-throw stretch where all 3 of them are picked off, and the Bears are able to open up a lead. Then the Bengals get some momentum back. Fields was baited into a pretty rough interception. Like you said, a little bit of ups and downs, but I thought the best play from him was without question the 10-yard scramble on 3rd and 9, because without that, the Bengals have a chance to go down and either tie or win the game, and that essentially prevented that from happening. And that mobility is an element to the offense that Andy Dalton or Nick Foles, who's back as the backup, and neither of them have that ability. So no other criticism intended. At the very least, he can do more with his legs than the other options.
And that should also help out David Montgomery, the running back there, who looked really great in week 1, looked pretty solid in week 2 as well, too. So, I mean, adding that dimension at the quarterback position makes defenses figure out, are you going to stop the quarterback or the running back? And he has the ability to make some throws, too. So let's focus real quick on this Cleveland matchup with the Bears. I know we're not going to spend too much time on any of these teams today because it's a shorter episode we mentioned. But looking at this Cleveland defense, now they did get torched by Tyrod Taylor and also Patrick Mahomes, one better than on the other. You can do the math there. But you look at it, and I see, look, the Cleveland defense has been exposed over these last few weeks. Do you think that's something Justin Fields can add to, or do you think it's more of a controllable, low-scoring game?
I think there will be some moments where you see the talent and the upside of Justin Fields. I think Cleveland's a little bit too talented to struggle like this the entire season, but I don't think it's going to be a game where the Bears only score 7, 10, 13 points either. I think they can at least get at least 2 touchdown drives. So I'd say somewhere in the 20-point range, where I do expect Cleveland to be able to put up more points than Cincinnati did. They have a better offense all around, obviously, but I expect it to be a relatively close game. I think Cleveland will pull away with a late touchdown in the 4th, something like that, where they win by about 10. But I do not expect this to be an easy game on either side. I think Fields is going to have to adjust. I think Cleveland's going to throw some different looks at him. They have various levels of talent on their defense, and this is going to be a new scheme that he's facing. But I think there's enough holes there where Fields is going to be able to make some plays and keep this game closer than some people might think.
Yeah, he is a special talent. We haven't argued that at all. But that brings me to my next little question we have here with Justin Fields does Justin Fields start every game the rest of the season, or do we see Andy Dalton come back at some point?
I mean, I think Fields should start every game. If Nagy's serious about this, about the promise, though, right now, if Fields gives you a reason, or if he clearly shows that he's more likely to win you a game, then Dalton's not going to play. But if he has a middling performance or two here, or throws a couple of picks early, then even though it's completely stupid, Dalton will end up starting when he's healthy again. So nothing personal against him, but let's be realistic. Who has more talent and who's more likely to win you a game?
Yeah, the only thing that Andy Dalton has going for him is the veteran experience. So maybe if the Bears are in a situation where they do drop some games and see the upside with Andy Dalton, which not a lot of people do, but if the Bears see it and trying to keep Matt Nagy's job around, I think that could also have a big factor. He's got to win football games with what he has going here. But once Justin Fields hits the field, it's going to be hard to take him off with all the Bears fans shouting his name on game day.
Yeah, I mean that's been true since the preseason, and I like how both Dalton and Fields have handled that whole situation. I do think both of them have handled it extremely well and professionally, and have minimized the distraction as much as possible. But we all know what the present, no matter how long it's going to end up lasting with Dalton, it's not going to be the future one way or the other. Real quick, I want to give I know this has nothing to do with the quarterback situation, but very quick shout out to Roquan Smith, who I think has
Phenomenal.
started to separate himself as the best player on the Bears defense these days. At the very least, I think he's the most consistent. We're starting to see him absolutely take over. Had the pick six off of Burrow the other day. I want to say he had 12 or 13 tackles. He was all over the field, and I just want to highlight him for that.
Yeah, that's a props to Roquan. He is that leader on the defense. I mean, everyone talks about Khalil Mack, and, Quinn on the outside, and Eddie Jackson, who they've watched the last few years isn't who he was. But it's Roquan Smith that should be talked about as the focal point of that Bears defense. So looking at that, I think that's another name you bring up. But let's dive in. Once every single week, we said we're going to get into a pick with all these teams. The Browns will be playing the Chicago Bears. This one will be played in Cleveland. Who takes this game?
I got the Browns 31-20.
31-20. I'm going to also side with Cleveland. I think without Jarvis Landry, Odell up in the air, I think it's a little bit closer. I'm going to go 24-17 is going to be my prediction with the Cleveland Browns winning that one. But let's head over to the New York Jets where, we sort of teased it about how Bill Belichick is great against rookie quarterbacks. Even if he has a rookie quarterback on his side, it doesn't matter. He schemes well defensively against rookies. And that showed. And Zach Wilson did not look good. He had 4 interceptions, kind of had a Sam Darnold moment. And we all saw that TikTok video of that kid who is probably under 14 years old, just shredding the Jets and making valid points on that film breakdown.
Yeah, that kid wasn't wrong. I feel like that was me about 10 years ago. I mean, we all know, we could all see me doing that. Yeah, Wilson had a rough game. Those 4 picks came on his first 10 passes. We all knew that a moment like that was possible, especially with how extremely intelligent and detailed that a New England coach defense is. But yeah, it wasn't an encouraging sign. In fairness to Wilson, while one of the interceptions was thrown directly to a Patriot, the others were tipped up, deflected, and it wasn't quite as directly his fault, but it was still a bit of a discouraging performance after he finished week 1 on a much stronger note in the Carolina game. And it was not, unfortunately, able to carry that momentum into week 2. He was dominated pretty good. Mac Jones didn't even have to play very well. And it was still just, the Patriots defense was absolutely dominant. And I think they would have made a good quarterback, or let me rephrase that, an established quarterback struggle, but a rookie quarterback in his second start, he didn't stand a chance.
Yeah, maybe he had 3 interceptions. Maybe it was 3 if Corey Davis had ups, but he doesn't. That's one of those things the kid pointed out on that video. But look, he's a rookie quarterback. The Jets aren't winning the Super Bowl this year. I make the same argument with the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. Look, they're going to develop. They need time. I mean, it might be frightening for him to go up against Bill Belichick. He faced him another time this year, but that's where you could see the growth. Before you play another game against Bill Belichick and the Patriots defense, you understand, look, this is what they did last time. Let's just play calm and do all those great things. But I wanted to bring up one more name on the Jets at the running back position, Michael Carter. I mean, we talked about the running backs. Ty Johnson, I said, still doesn't deserve to have a job in football based on stats. Come at me if you want. Michael Carter stepped up this week. He had 56 yards rushing, and he looked pretty solid.
Now, real quick, the quarterback thing with Wilson. Did you say see growth or see ghosts?
Oh, funny. Yeah, he's not
Thank
Sam,
you.
so he's going to see growth, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you. Hang on. Second time already on this episode. I'm stroking myself off. Running back wise, I thought Michael Carter was by far the best and most dynamic looking running back, and I think he clearly is the most talented one in that locker room right now. No offense intended to LaMichael P. Ryan or Ty Johnson or whoever the hell I'm forgetting right now.
Kevin
Uh,
Coleman.
Tevin Coleman, thank you. I saw him at IU in person. How do I forget that one? But I think all of them would be better off as secondary options. Like we saw Coleman, for example, succeed with Devontae Freeman as a handcuff for a few years in Atlanta, but neither of them are the same player they once were. And running back shelf lives are pretty short in general. And I do think Michael Carter showed more. Now, fourth round pick, wasn't even the highest drafted running back on his own college team, as it turned out. So I think he has a little bit more left or a little bit less wear on his tires. So he's going to look fresher. I do understand the Jets not wanting to give him 25 carries a game right off the bat because that will only deteriorate him quickly and the Jets offensive line sucks. But I do think giving him the majority of the running share or getting him involved more as a receiver would be a wise choice.
You know who he reminds me of a lot, especially with the situation given? Remember when it was Kenyon Drake that came out with Derrick Henry in Alabama? He didn't have the wear on his tires. He didn't really play much in Miami with Adam Gase. I mean, who did? But once he did start to get some opportunity, he started to get some chances, and he's an older running back now. He's been in the league for a while, and he still looks fresh, and he still has life. So maybe that's a similar spot here for Michael Carter. Obviously, he's already seen the field more than Drake did in his rookie season. But one more name on the defensive side that's still starting to, I mean, after 2 weeks, it's starting to make me a little bit concerned. Quinnen Williams only had one tackle again. He didn't have any impact on the game defensively. That's two straight games for him. Do you think it's a little bit too early to panic?
I think it's a little bit because I think he is the main focus of opposing teams' offensive line. I think he could expect to face some double teams on top of the ones that he already has. Let's give him a couple more weeks to see if he starts to become more disruptive because he didn't have a great rookie season either, but was significantly better in year two, where you really started to see him justify that third overall picks selection and status. And you see that he has the potential and the ability to be one of the most dominant interior defensive linemen in football. And he commands a lot of attention for good reasons. So let's give him some time here to adjust to facing NFL double teams before we panic. Let's give it another month, see if he starts to be more impactful then.
The Jets will be making the trip to Denver. That is their matchup against the Broncos on Sunday. And I witnessed with my own eyes. I watched the Jaguars play. Obviously, I'm a Jags fan, and I saw Vic Fangio scheme well against Trevor Lawrence after the opening drive that led to a touchdown. I think a similar thing happens here with Zach Wilson. He's not going to see as tough tests as he did against Bill Belichick and the Patriots, but I still think it's a multiple interception day for Zach Wilson. I'm going to lead off the predictions here. I think that the Denver Broncos win this game with a score of 24-10.
We're on a similar wavelength there. In Denver, hell, we've both already been screwed by the Broncos fan wise. The offense that Denver has, I think, is extremely well designed to take advantage of the Jets defense here. And you have to remember Von Miller is going to terrorize whatever is left of the Jets offensive line here. So I was thinking 27-10. I think the Jets will manage one touchdown, but I'm going to put a wrinkle in here. I don't know why I think this is going to be on a kick return.
Ooh, I like that. I like that. Hey, if you're going off of last week, Jamal Agnew had a kick return, so their special teams are worthy about giving up big plays in that department. But now, after something that could be somewhat promising, we head over to the New York Giants, and the Giants played on Thursday night an absolute soul crusher of a game that led up to the final kick with Dustin Hopkins putting it through the uprights. One thing that I took away from this game was Daniel Jones' rushing ability. He's always had it. He ran the ball a lot, and it always seems like he pops one big run on every single Thursday night football game the Giants have.
Yeah, I'd almost argue he popped a few. Before I get into this, I want to make it clear I am not blaming Daniel Jones for the game. I thought he played very well overall.
Did.
But yeah, that feeling of existential dread that this season was giving me is definitely manifested, unfortunately. Can't say I'm surprised, but that doesn't mean I'm happy about it. Every one of those soul crushing, but somehow completely predictable games that we find ways to fuck up just makes me long for the sweet relief of death a little bit more every single day. So they're gonna put me in an early grave here.
Yeah, it was a tough game. I couldn't imagine being a Giants fan. I was watching it as a Giants bettor, which I mean that has no correlation whatsoever. But I couldn't imagine being a fan in that situation because I mean to have the game was in your hands. It seemed like the Giants beat themselves right then and there. I mean they won the game, but then they also lost the game on a game that they frankly won. So it was a tough contest. J.D. McKissick had a couple of nice grabs down the sideline out of the backfield and it was a tough game.
Yeah, that's pretty much every game for the last 9 years outside of some of 2016. Yeah, I'm not exactly a patient person and all, but I can't take it anymore. I really can't. It's all the same shit. You want to the Giants want to market everything like things are different. Well, you have the same quarterback and offensive system that sucks and terrible offensive line that only got more injured during the game and a supposedly good defense that's looked like complete dog shit for the first 2 weeks and couldn't stop a nosebleed from a 5-year old. I can't fucking watch it anymore. Now, what I also can't deal with is the lack of aggressiveness from Jason Garrett anymore either. And I thought Washington was one of his better play called games, and there were still moments where I just wanted to shoot him. And Joe Judge for not going for it on fourth and short situations and either punting or settling for Graham Gano kicking more field goals. And I'm not blaming him either. He made all of his kicks, but I would like to see him start kicking more extra points and forcing the issue to make that happen. There were so many points left on the scoreboard in the game, too. There were just so many things that had to happen to lose the game, and they wouldn't have happened to any other team in the league outside of maybe Detroit. But they happen to us every week. So I'm not thrilled, if you can't tell. Quickly, there were two main plays, I think, that we can point at that each ended up costing the Giants some
Yep.
points. On Daniel Jones's run, I think there was an extremely questionable at best holding call down the field. I really didn't see a hold there. Bias aside, that was pretty mild in my eyes. But worse, of course, is the soul-crushing Slayton doing his best Evan Ingram impression drop in the end zone. If I can catch chlamydia, Darius, you gotta fucking catch that ball in the end zone because you keep costing us 4 points. And I just look what happens at the end of the game, man. Catch the fucking ball.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up the wide receiver position real quick before we wrap up. I'm a little bit not concerned or anything, but I'm just, it's a little bit mind boggling here. Sterling Shepard has looked like the number one wide receiver through these first 2 weeks, and Kenny Galladay's sort of been on the back burner. Galladay got paid the big money. Is that a situation where you feel the coverage is shifted over towards Galladay the whole time, or do you think that it's just Sterling Shepard being the better wide receiver?
I think Shepard might actually be a better fit for this offense because he's a great short area wide receiver. You don't really look to throw bombs 40 yards down the field to him, but he's a great route runner and can get himself open in the short areas. And unfortunately, that's mostly what Jason Garrett focuses on. Galladay just said that he was yelling at Garrett on the
Yeah.
sideline and not Jones. And that might be true, but 2 games into a $76 million deal or whatever, I would not say that's a great sign. And I don't really love how Galladay has been used so far, although in fairness, he had a pretty bad drop in the fourth quarter as well. Not quite as bad as Slayton's, but I think he's just been okay so far. Kadarius Toney's been a ghost. He's
Yep.
played a total of 22 snaps in 2 games, and we both have more receiving yards than he does right now. So, yeah, I don't love it. But one of all the things, like I'm not gonna, as much as the offsides was annoying and everything, I'm not gonna let myself only focus on that because it's just ridiculous. When James Bradbury has not been off to a very good start these first 2 games, right? But
Mhm.
he did make one extremely nice play for the only turnover of the game, right? And he said it himself. He thought that turnover won them the game. It should have. Well, Garrett, I thought was better than usual. it was the sequence right after the interception that pissed me off more than anything else, because there was, I want to say, 2:15 give or take left on the clock.
Mm-hmm.
Washington has all 3 timeouts and the 2-minute warning. 2 extremely predictable runs that get a yard each, and then a pass that has no chance of being completed on 3rd and 8. And you take exactly 10 seconds off the clock, and you leave Washington with a timeout and the 2-minute warning before you kick a field goal that only puts you up by 2. I mentioned this right before we started recording, right? You watch the Ravens game, 4th and 1, they go for it. They try to win the game right there, knowing if they punt, Patrick Mahomes will go down and win the game against them. If you're going to lose, go down swinging, right? Fortune favors the bold. The Giants are not bold. They play not to lose, and it doesn't even work. So from my perspective, it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I can see how it can be frustrating. But let's dive into the prediction this week. They take on an Atlanta Falcons squad who is good offensively, but it's taking a little while to show it. I'm actually interested in this game. I think it's going to be a much better game. I know teams look at the teams and are like, our fans look at the teams and think, it's one of those games that might not be a marquee matchup on a Sunday, but I think it's two good football teams going up against each other. So what are your thoughts on the game?
Well, I actually think it's 2 of the worst teams in the league going up against each other. The Giants have 10 days to prepare for a game against one of the league's worst defenses. Although the Giants' defenses look terrible, so I expect a decent amount of points to be put up on the board here. Now, Jason Garrett's offense is not capable of having a shootout, I don't think. So the Giants desperately need it. They're at home, which is why I have the Falcons winning 28-21 in the 4th quarter. We lose these games. Prove me wrong.
28-21 in the 4th quarter. I'm actually going with the Giants here. I think they bounce back. You said 10 days to prepare. Falcons defense that's looked lost ever since the Super Bowl. I think I'm going to go ahead here and say that this one goes to the Giants. And call me out here. Maybe they get a special teams touchdown. They win the ball game 30-27.
I hope that's what happens, but I'll believe it when I see it. Quick disclaimer for anyone who might be still thinking about it. I don't actually have chlamydia, by the way.
Yeah, that sort of flew under the radar. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Glad you cleared the air there. But let's head over to the Yankees. Final topic we'll talk about today. The Yankees in a tough spot. They're in the playoffs right now, the wild card spot. Toronto's look fantastic. The Seattle Mariners are catching fire. And the Yankees have a 1-game lead in the wild card at the number 2 spot. They play Boston, they play Toronto, and they also play Tampa Bay in 3 series to end out the season. That begins on Friday. So they play Boston right away. That's going to be a huge series. How confident are you in the Yankees right now?
Why don't you take a guess?
I'm going to guess at 0.
Yeah. Well, why exactly would I be confident? This is a team that can't beat the Orioles, and now we're going to beat the Red Sox on the road, a team that's won 7 in a row and plays like they actually care to make the playoffs. Again, prove me wrong. If the Giants make me long for the sweet relief of death, and the Yankees make me feel like I have a yeast infection, and that doesn't even make sense, but that's where I'm at. They how about Drake and Josh reference? They give me stomach aches. They don't make me feel good while I watch them.
Nice.
Garrett Cole's starting the game tomorrow night. The Red Sox have won 7 straight, and even as pessimistic as I am, I find it unlikely that they're going to win 9 straight to end the season. So I hope they don't. At least the Yankees, I have a feeling, will end up with 1 out of 3.
Luis Severino came back. He came back. He gave 2 innings of work earlier this week. I think he could have it might be a little bit too little too late with him, but I do think he can provide some sort of spunk. Whether you use him in a bullpen role or just get his pitch count up to where he can become a starter again, I think he can have a big factor in these next few games in the series coming up. There are so many tough ones here. You got to take 2 out of 3 against Toronto and Boston, and you got to hope to at least stay competent against Tampa if you want to have a shot at the postseason. Because we mentioned it before we came on here. We said that there's Toronto and Boston both have series against. They play Baltimore, and they also, one of them plays the Twins, one of them plays the Nationals. So not necessarily hard matchups in that department. So they could end up taking some. Maybe the Orioles give you some luck the way that they beat you, but you never know. Baseball is baseball. It's a 162. Every game matters, and it's going to come down to the end. The crazy thing is there are 4 teams in the AL East battling for multiple playoff spots.
Yeah. I mean, when the Yankees got really aggressive at the trade deadline, I still thought it wasn't going to be enough to make the wild card. And I'm kind of back where I started there. The Yankees definitely have a contender for the most useless 13 game winning streak of all time outside of Oakland's from the beginning of this season, because theirs is looking like it's not really going to help them much now. Um, I mean, they immediately gave up 12 out of 14. They had a 7 game losing streak that finally ended with taking one game against the Mets barely before losing another one. The Yankees have had what, 8, 9, 10 extremely soul crushing losses this season. And if they just hold on to 6 or 7 of those, they're clearly in a wild card spot right now. So they have no one to blame but themselves. But that doesn't mean I have to be happy about it. The Orioles get a series against both Boston and Toronto in the next 10 days. So I think best case scenario, they go 1-5 in those 6 games, because the other teams in the division have, and bear with me here, beaten the living hell out of the worst team in baseball, while the Yankees have gone 10-8, which just isn't good enough. It isn't. You play 18 games against the Orioles, you got to win at least 14 of them, I think. And every other team has managed to do that. And you beat up on the teams you should. And then, yeah, I mean, I just don't see the Yankees being a team that struggle mightily against bad teams, all of a sudden beating good teams on the road, teams that they've struggled against all season. You mentioned the 3 teams we have left on the schedule, right? So far this season, we're 19-29 against those 3 teams. And unless they really reverse that trend right now, we're not getting in. And that's not me just being pessimistic. It's a fact, because whatever games we lose, they will win because we're playing them directly.
That's fair. I mean, that's your opportunity to jump. It's also your opportunity to slide. We saw that take place with the Oakland Athletics, where they had a 4 game series against Seattle. They play them again. So
Mhm.
Seattle's not out of it either. I mean, we've talked about the AL East teams there. Seattle's 2 games back of that Yankee spot as the number 2 wild card team. So they could be an interesting story there. But I'm curious now. Say the Yankees do make the postseason. Do you think they can beat Boston with a Garrett Cole start in Boston?
No, I don't, because Garrett Cole, who's going to have a third start in Boston tomorrow, his first 2 have been awful. He's given up 10 runs in 8 innings so far this season at Fenway. One of those games, he gave up 4 runs in the first inning, and I just turned the game off and moved on with my Sunday. And it's probably the smartest thing I've done this year, because that game did not get better. If Garrett Cole struggles, the Yankees will not win for him. Hell, he gets outside of Jordan Montgomery, who doesn't get any run support at all. It's just like, if the Yankees aren't, if Cole's not the dominant self that he's capable of being and is sometimes, it's like the Yankees just don't even bother trying to win a shootout for him. You mentioned Severino coming back, and it was great to see him after 2 years. He pitched pretty well. He's going to be a reliever. The question is he going to be someone who can pitch, say, 3, 4 innings if needed in a game
Mhm.
where the Yankees are either up or down by several runs, trying to keep them in it through 30 pitches? So I'm curious to see what role he has. And to a lesser extent, Domingo Herman just got activated as well. And I think he's also going to be used out of the bullpen. He was warming up in yesterday's game against Texas. The Yankees, understandably, with today being an off day, used Chapman to finish it off instead. But Herman, I think, is going to be used in a similar role where he might be able to get 2 or 3 innings out of him from the bullpen, somebody who can give you length. And both of those guys are significantly better options than Andrew fucking Heaney. So
Yeah.
that's at least a step in the right direction. And really quick, Michael King has been really, really good since he's come back as well. He can also pitch multiple innings if needed. So some of the Yankees pitching depth is coming back here. The only one who hasn't yet so far is Jamison Tyone.
Yeah, Tyone, obviously he still has a comeback. He had a great stretch there early in the second half of the season, so he could potentially have another big role if he can come back here shortly. But I think adding pitching at this time of year is what you need. So it's just, can they be sharp when they come in? You can't afford to bring Herman in and get shelled for 5 runs, because that just takes you right out of a game. And you need to be sharp when you come in. So I'm pretty sure maybe he wasn't supposed to come in. They just wanted to get him up and seeing, okay, how are you feeling? Are you ready to come in? Not that he was going to, but it gets him that energy like, okay, you're about to go pitch. How sharp do you feel? Because that might be something that could take place. It will take place this weekend against Boston. So big series there. The Yankees got to pull out in that one. What do you feel Or do you have any other takeaways with the Yankees?
I mean, looking at the offense, the offensively, they've had most of the same problems all season. A ridiculous amount of double plays, no situational hitting, way too many outs on the bases, especially at home plate. And while they managed to overcome those just enough in the Texas series for finally sweeping a team they need to sweep, that's not going to work against these better teams. It just isn't. And they do a decent job of getting base runners for the most part, but they definitely do not do a good job of advancing them or keeping them on base. It's just the same problems all year. Oddly enough, Judge and Stanton have been probably the two most consistent hitters for the Yankees this year. They've been healthy for the most part, to a lesser extent. Maybe you could argue Gary Sanchez as well, who's at least resurged a bit in the power department despite his other flaws. Um, but some of these guys who have been big contributors the last couple of seasons for the Yankees were one of the better offensive teams. This year, they're 22nd, I think, in the league in runs per game. And you're getting not much, frankly, out of guys like DJ LeMahieu or Gleyber Torres or Gio Urshela. Offensively, Voit hasn't been much of a factor this year. And then Rizzo gets brought in, and he's been even less of a factor. And to a lesser extent, guys like Clint Frazier and Miguel Andujar have been out most of the season now.
Yeah.
And you're relying on a couple of guys to carry an entire offense. And it's just not going to work. It just isn't, because even when guys like Judge and Stanton and Sanchez or Joey Gallo are on, they also have a ton of swing and miss in their game. And that contributes, I think, to the lack of situational hitting and manufacturing runs, where they're going to need to be able to do that at some point. Now, would it be great if you get all of them going for the last week of the season where they hit a few bombs and you win that way? Sure. But considering what we've seen all season, outside of them maybe being able to do that for one game, can you rely on them to do it consistently here over the next 9 games? Because I just don't see it.
They've always been a streaky offense. They've
Mhm.
shown flashes where they can put it together, and they've shown flashes where they just look atrocious. So maybe the Yankees can catch fire here. I mean, they have an off day to focus up, and then you head up to Boston to take on the Red Sox there, and maybe that's a situation where if the offense starts humming right out of the gates, it can continue to roll, and you could see a streak that could potentially leapfrog them into the postseason.
The best case scenario, I think, for the Yankees, it obviously is making one of the wild card spots, hopefully winning that game, but just try to focus on getting there first. Bare minimum, if they really want to make the postseason, I think of these next 6 games against Boston and Toronto, they need to take at least 4 of them. I don't think a split would be enough. Now, let's say they get 4 out of 6, they'll be in a pretty similar position to where they are now, possibly just into the playoffs or tied with someone, depending on what the Mariners do over that same time frame. That last series against Tampa, I think the best case for the Yankees is the Rays have clinched the division by then, and they're locked into whatever seed they have, and they rest some guys. I don't really see the Rays as a team that will do that, but I'm hoping that if they are locked into their seed, that they will rest some guys, and that the Yankees will be able to have a more advantageous matchup, because they've struggled against the Rays even more than they have against Boston and Toronto. So I think that would be the best case. If Tampa's not trying very hard in that last series, the Yankees, I want them to show that urgency and that desperation. And I don't think we've seen that enough, even though they managed to win this Texas series. They had so many opportunities to score where they didn't, or they just had the soul crushing mistakes that they've had the whole season. And it's just not going to fly against better teams, because you will lose if you keep squandering opportunities against teams that are better than you.
Yeah, and we'll wrap up here. We haven't talked about the Mariners' schedule. Obviously, we talked about everyone else's schedule in that division. The Mariners, they got 3 against the Angels. They got another 3 against Oakland, who they just swept in 4. And then they got 3 against the Angels again. So they got 6 games against Los Angeles. That could potentially benefit them. But I still think the Angels are a good enough team to where they could take at least one in each of those series. So could be a fun ride. It should be a fun ride coming out. So make sure you tune in and watch some baseball, because Yankees Red Sox on a weekend with this much magnitude should be a fun watch.
Yeah, it's definitely here's your opportunity, like you said, like better for worse. I don't really have a great reason to feel good about it because the Red Sox and Blue Jays have both been hot, and the Yankees had their opportunity to solidify their position. They've had several opportunities, and they've squandered all of them. So I don't see a team that's faltered in less pressure packed situations all of a sudden riding the ship with the season on the line here. But I hope they prove me wrong. They've had their moments throughout the year, but they've also had several extremely avoidable and stupid losses. And if they win those games, then they have a cushion right now, and they're at least in good position to make the wild card. So here's the opportunity. They need of these last 9 games. I mean, obviously, if they won all of them, they would guarantee themselves a spot. But more realistically, got to win at least 6 or 7 of the 9 to really feel like you can get in the playoffs because these teams are all desperate. And if you think you're going to back in winning 3 or 4 of the games, you're wrong.
Yeah, it's you're not going to back in at all. So I mean, it's a good one. We'll start off here Friday. It'll be Garrett Cole taking the ball for the Yankees against Nadia Valdi. Friday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be a fantastic one. So be sure to check that one out because if you're new to baseball, you're just tuning in, whatever it is. This is what it comes about. I mean, this is Yankees Red Sox battling for the postseason. Should be a lot of fun. But that's going to do it for today. I appreciate everybody that tuned in. Talk football in the open. Then we went on over to baseball with the Yankees. So hope you enjoyed today's episode. Be sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. Drop a comment. Head on over to Facebook if you want to see, or not Facebook, rather YouTube, and see our faces there. And make sure you subscribe to that as well. More visual content on there for you. So I appreciate everybody that tuned in. But until next time, for Swig, I'm Dylan Kearns, and this is an episode of the Big City Sports Podcast.